Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I applaud a lot of the accomplishments you and Jeff have made over the last several years. And I also understand that one of your goals has to be, building credibility as you look down the road and say the system needs more funding. But, reading the Globe this morning, and I don't usually agree with much on the editorial page of the Globe, when they talk about the Longfellow Bridge project and that the administration is insisting on project labor agreements, which insists that it's going to be all unions, all union wages, which they say adds about 12% to school construction costs, for example. How do you square that with coming to ask us as taxpayers, hey, pay more money because we're paying off some of our political friends here, or overpaying to get a project done? How do you square that with what you're asking for?
So this probably won't surprise you, but I vehemently disagree with the Globe this morning. The project labor agreement, this will be the first that we've had in years, and the only one we're planning to have under our Accelerated Bridge program. It is a very complicated project. The Longfellow Bridge obviously is an iconic structure. We have to keep it open for the Red Line. It is more important, frankly, for transit users than it is for road users. And so what we will have is employees at the T, DCR, and other institutions working, or government agencies working alongside the contractors. We thought it was very important to have a PLA for that regard. What the Globe editorial, of course, doesn't tell you is we've been able to negotiate things like no overtime on the weekend. That's pretty good, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so that's part of our project labor agreement, because we can't be working during the normal Monday through Friday hours of 8 to 4. Ludicrous. But what we can be doing, and what we will be doing, is doing a lot of work on nights and weekends, and we've eliminated the overtime provisions there. So I vehemently challenge it. I'm happy to give you some information about why we think the PLA in this instance makes sense for not only reducing our costs, but this was not any push. I never had any conversations with any politicos about whether this was the right thing to do or not. My construction team came to me and said, Secretary, this is the right thing to do for this particular project. Here are the reasons why. So, I appreciate that point. You're also looking at the administration that introduced flaggers. I know we were the last state in America to do that, but we did it. And that was, from some labor friends, not popular. We just eliminated 2 operators in the Red Line on Saturday. That was not popular with labor either. So notwithstanding labor's typical support of Democrats, we've pushed very hard in a number of areas to make sure that your costs are reduced. I just told you we're going to potentially begin to eliminate toll collectors. I can tell you that went over like a lead balloon. Big lead balloon, by the way. But folks, acknowledge, even on the labor side, that the time has come for technology, and let's try to work together to transition folks out. So I do appreciate the question, but I think we've got a pretty good record of showing that in this singular instance, it was important to do that, but there are other instances where we're very much focused on how we can improve our cost structure. So thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I would applaud you and Secretary Mullen for all the reforms you've made, and some of them were absolutely necessary. I would think that procurement or supply chain would be a huge part of your contract. And I know as a major company, we do supply chain, and past performance and cost is a major issue for us. I'm just wondering what your oversight is for cost and past performance, because I know many years ago, back in the mid-90s, we decided to get into transportation, and we were involved in a contract with the MBTA. And the company they picked was a bankrupt Spanish company for a train where they had operated in California in 2 cities and towns, and they fell off the track. And we actually
literally or figuratively? Both.
Literally.
Yeah.
And we warned the Secretary what they were picking, and that they said we had a performance bond. And lo and behold, when it came to Boston, they fell off the track. They didn't work. I'm just wondering, how do you get into this past performance now and make sure that everything is working correctly and at the lowest cost?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the answer is yes. I mean, we don't want to buy lemons, that's for sure. And particularly in vehicles, I think that's always a significant challenge, right? So the T purchased Green Line cars, the Breda, so-called Breda cars a few years ago. They had significant challenges. We're finally able to come to a resolution. We've had very good luck with Siemens, though. The new Blue Line cars we purchased, we've had very few issues. And I would argue the Blue Line is probably our best performing line as a result. You probably read last week that my foreign relations tact with Hyundai Rotem, the Koreans, hasn't been great. But in that instance, frankly, we think they probably underbid to enter into the United States market. The team at the time made the decision. Again, it's ours to manage, and so we've been pushing them very hard. The good news there is we think we're going to get an excellent product. Unfortunately, it's delayed. So using those levers, pushing folks. But no, past performance is critical. You can't buy a lemon. You can't be managing a lemon for forever. And vehicles in particular are, I think, the most troubling. You know, we're being more creative and pushing staff out to go visit a lot of these factories and locations to make sure that the subcontractors, the U.S.-based subcontractors, are providing good materials to our vendors. We have a locomotive procurement out right now. They're U.S.-based. We're very pleased at what we've seen so far from them. But again, getting staff out, asking tough questions, and making sure that they have the backing of myself and the board and the general manager is critical to getting a good product. I think what I have found, Charlie is an example where there was so much pressure to get Charlie introduced into the system 5 years ago that it was clear what we bought was about 80 to 85% of what was needed. So, for example, in this discussion we've had today on fare increases, we talked about looking at doing discriminating pricing midday. In other words, giving you a price break, say between the hours of 10 and 4, when we have capacity. We can't do it. We required the contractor to write it in a few years ago, and they just didn't get it done. So they're getting it done now. So in government, what I've asked my staff to do and my team to do is, look, don't be worried about the press event or pushing something out the door. Make sure it's right before we introduce it. And that goes back to the improving the credibility question with the public.